Thank you for inviting me to give this presentation. So today I will talk about how we can improve active fault monitoring using submarine telecom fiber optic cable. And most of the work I will show you today is part of a project that I am developing in Chile. And some of the work also some work in the Mediterranean Sea on other cable that we have been working with over the past few years. So this work is that I will show you today is the work that a lot of people did actually. So part of them are listed here. So Marie, Alistair Trabatoni, Martin van den End, Itza Clear, who's a former postdoc here at GeoAzure, Clara Vernet, who's a master student. So Marie is an engineer working with me, Alistair postdoc, Martin a postdoc, Jean-Paul Ampuero, you know him, Anthony Sladen, and also Sergio Barrientos, who is the head of the Centro Sismológico Nacional in Chile. So, as you know, distributed acoustic sensing is a novel technique that converts fiber optic into dense seismic array. And over the past about 10 years, I will say, this novel technique has demonstrated its very high potential in a lot of fields in geophysics and in different settings, especially hardly accessible one like the ocean floor. And today I will talk only on experiments that have been developed in the ocean floor. Okay. So about 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water and is very hardly accessible to instrumentation and blind to teledetection. However, as you all know, there is a big threat of different natural hazards in this especially vulnerable area. And if we consider only global seismic risk, we see that a lot of very active seismic areas are concentrated close to coastal area, especially in subduction zone. So for this reason, because the epicenter of these events are located offshore, it is slightly hard to access a very precise observation and information about this event offshore. So usually for seafloor observation, when we talk about permanent observation, we need to have like cable instruments that are very hard to maintain, expensive to maintain. One of the most amazing networks that exists is probably the SNET network in Japan, that provide a real-time observation for seismology and tsunami with a seismometer and pressure gauges, but the cost of such instrumentation is very, very high. So an alternative is to leverage commercial telecom cable. So here you have a map of all the cable that have been deployed. So I think this not very up to date. So there are other cables that have been deployed since I made this map. But basically, you have all this cable, and I will show you that we can use this cable for seismology purposes. So, and you see here in Chile, so today I will talk mainly about, I don't know if you see my mouse. Oh, sorry.
We see it. We can see it.
Okay, great. So in Chile, we see that we have both, as you know, a very active seismicity with very large events. And there is also this very nice network that I will describe you later that I'm using for my project. So this new type of observation using DAS and offshore cable will allow to provide in a short time scale, I will say, continuous real-time data close to fault for active fault monitoring and early warning. So I try to make an outline of my talk. So first, I will talk about the principle of DAS distributed sensing technique. Then I will talk about some work that we have been doing to prove the DAS capability for marine seismology. And then I will talk about more specifically about the Chilean project to build a new type of observatory using submarine fiber optic cable. So the DAS technology transforms a fiber optic cable into thousands of sensors distributed along the cable up to distances that can reach about 150 kilometers, probably a bit longer now with a new technology. Oh, sorry, why it's moving along. I don't know, like this maybe. So basically, with a 150 kilometer long array, we can have 77,000 sensors every 4 meters. So basically, the idea is that there is an instrument here called the DAS interrogator that sends light pulses onto the fiber. And as the light travels, part of the light is refracted as it travels. And by analyzing the property of the light, of the backscattered light, we can measure precisely the phase and how the phase will change along the fiber when there is a deformation applied to the fiber, such as static deformation or dynamic, like a seismic wave or acoustic wave that reach the cable. So more precisely, here is a sketch of the light pulse traveling within the fiber with a kind of swipe type of pulses with different frequencies. And at different position of the fiber along, there is this backscattered light. And when there is a change in the length of the cable, here, a delta L, for instance, this light that is refracted at a given time will have a little delay in time that we can measure in the phase. So if basically we measure the phase difference all along the fiber at different position and at different time. And basically by doing the measurement of the phase change in time and space, we can recover the strain along this position and along the fiber. So the longitudinal strain that we are measuring. So basically here is an example of what we get in terms of measurement in DAS. So we get the intensity here. So this is about less than a few hundred meters. And if we have a change in terms of, for instance, a seismic wave or a deformation applied to the fiber, we'll have a change in the intensity of the backscattered light and then the phase of the backscattered light. And the phase, as we saw in the previous slide is linearly proportional to the deformation. So this technique has a lot of advantages for underwater DAS. It is can provide information about different things, as I will show you a bit later: pressure, strain, acoustic, seismic, obviously. It's distributed, so we can have up to one sensor every meter, for instance. It's long range over more than 100 kilometers. And the maintenance is quite simple because we don't have any instrument on the water offshore, and it's generally connected close to the coast, and it's generally very accessible. Low cost, I would say low cost compared to cable ocean bottom seismometer. To have a rough idea, an interrogator, maybe this is a low estimation, but it's $150 one single instrument, and a fiber, if you want to install it yourself, is some few dollars per meter. So now I will make a bit of an overview of the work we have been doing in the group for the past few years on different experiments in the Mediterranean Sea. And it is from those work and experiment that I built my idea of moving to a more seismic active region like Chile. So the work I will show you right after were made on three experiments. So a cable in Toulon, Cable 3net here, that is an academic cable that was installed to instrument a neutrino telescope under the water here. The same for two cables in Greece, the HMR and Nestor cable that were installed by the physicist, and another cable that is a decommissioned cable, so from Monaco to Savone, so south of France, and that we have been working with since last year. So all these experiments were done in some region of moderate seismicity. So first, in 2019, we on an experiment we did with Anthony that lasts for 4 days, we recorded a tiny event, the only seismic event we were able to see at that time, which is a magnitude 1.9, so more than 100 kilometers away from the cable. So it was quite tiny and hard to detect on this very raw data that we were acquiring at that time. And as you see here, we have the 42 long kilometer cable, and here in gray color, so you have the strain rate measured at any position of the cable every 6.4 meters. And we see at the time of the earthquake that we have some wiggle coherent waveform that appear with some region that has a higher signal-to-noise ratio. And if we stack a bit the data over 150 meter long segment, we better see the waveform. And I don't show here, but basically the signal-to-noise ratio was very similar to a broadband station located on the coast here in a urban area. So we were able to see this event, and this gives us hope to be able to do seismology with, again, I would say, non-dedicated cable, which are just underwater telecom cable, which are not made at all for this purpose. So then we start working a bit deeper with this type of signal. So we moved to Greece at that time, and we did an experiment in a region with a higher seismic rate to see if we can record more events and try to assess the detection capability, and also if we were able to estimate properly the source properties of the event. So here you have the three seismic events that we detect in Greece. So all are below magnitude 3.6, so magnitude 3.6, 2.0, and 2.6. And you have here the comparison of the spectra. So here in the dark line, you have the DAS at different positions, the spectra of the DAS during an event, during the earthquake, here and there, and that is compared to a broadband seismometer, either offshore. So one of the seismometer is an OBS. So this is a orange one, and that is compared to the noise that we can record again on the DAS, red curves, versus the noise recorded on two on-land seismometer, Metoni north and south, and again the OBS. And basically from this figure, we see that we have the same detection capability as a ocean bottom seismometer, and we can accurately estimate detect at least these small events that are quite far away and with a small magnitude. So from this detection and several events, ITSAC, so he was working at GeoEther at that time, was able to build this curve. So basically, this curve indicates how we can detect. So the detection capability of a single DAS location position. So basically, everything that is so the black line represents the Fresnel to noise ratio at 1. So between 1 and 15 Hertz for the ground acceleration at different time apparent velocities. So the idea of the picture is to show that basically we will be able to detect slow wave for small magnitude at a long distance. But when we will measure fast wave, like P wave, our capability to detect the event will be much lower. Actually, DAS, because it measures strain or strain rate, has a greater sensitivity to slow wave that produce higher deformation than to fast wave. So for instance, at a distance of 100 kilometers, we will detect magnitude up to 1.8, for instance, for a wave that are traveling very slowly, 0.5 kilometers per second. But we will only detect P wave for events that have magnitude about 3, for instance. So this is a thing that we need to work with, actually, is that we have a different sensitivity. But basically, when we convert the data to acceleration, for instance, we see that the detection capability is very similar to what we can get with an ocean bottom seismometer. So the take-home messages here is that we have the detection capability will depend on the cable response and apparent velocity. So then we estimated the capability of DAS to estimate properly the source parameter. So here again, so because we are working with strain rate, and strain rate is I would say very close to what we have with ground motion acceleration. So here, hey. So if we convert the strain rate to acceleration, we can do that by dividing the strain rate by the apparent velocity. So to do so, a technique that ITSAC developed was to use a slant slack approach. So basically, it allows to measure at any time the velocity of the wave onto a small section of the DAS. And we can measure this velocity and at any time convert the strain rate to acceleration. And having this acceleration, we can use a model, ground motion source model to estimate the magnitude. And basically here, for the event we had during this experiment, we see that we have a good agreement between the catalog magnitude estimated and the magnitude we estimate with DAS. And I will come back to that later with a recent work we did with Chilean data. So another topic, apart from looking at the seismicity, is to work with other type of signal, produced by the interaction between the ocean and the solid earth. So here is a movie of the strain rate measure. I don't know if you see something. Yeah. So it's the movie of the strain rate measure for a few a minute or so. And I don't know if it's not, I think it's not working very well, but basically you see the gravity wave, so the ocean wave that are traveling toward the coast, and you see some feature that correspond to the for instance, the wave are slowing down, reaching the coast, and the frequency also is increasing. So I don't know if I'll try again.
We can see it.
Okay, great. So basically, this wave that produce some stream rates, so we can do some stuff about analyzing the dynamic of the ocean, but also these waves are producing microseismic noise, and working with microseismic noise that are produced by the interaction of gravity wave in different conditions can be used to do some passive imagery of the crust. So here is an example of 1 minute long signal in the Toulon cable. And what we see here, so I just showed you previously the gravity wave reaching the coast here. So here you have the distances, here's the time, and you see all these nice waves. Those are microseismic waves. So they are shortest waves that are traveling around. And basically, the idea is to use this wave to image, as we can do on land, to image the crustal structure. So we did that in Greece, in a small basin in Metoni, and using a record of shortest wave for a few days, we were able to construct a velocity model based on the correlation of the seismic noise of the shortest wave. And what was really nice also is that if we look at the response, I mean, this is a PSD along the fiber at any position, and we see that we have a very nice response in terms of frequency of the basin with this increasing resonance frequency when reaching the edge of the basin. So this technique can allow, this data can allow to provide very high resolution imagery of the structure below the fiber, and also to detect some nice feature about the geometry of the basin. Another thing is that when starting working with ambient noise on DAS data, we observed that the noise was having some specificity that were a bit surprising. For instance, when we start looking at how it evolved in time, for instance, the gravity waves and the secondary macroseismic wave, we see that they were really well correlated. And it's not always expected, because generally we expect that the gravity wave are generated, the microseismic wave are generated much further away than locally, for instance, in a big storm in the Atlantic and so on. But we were not able to detect that. We were able only to see gravity wave, secondary microseismic wave that were highly correlated in terms of frequency and energy with the local gravity wave we were detected. So basically, so this is a work of Gauthier Guérin. He's finishing his PhD, defending his PhD next week. And basically, and with Martijn also, we beamformed the secondary macroseismic wave during the 5 days of experiments in Toulon. And we were able to see that most of the microseismic wave we were measuring onto the fiber was produced locally by this specific mechanism that is the coastal reflection of gravity wave. So a storm, for instance, will produce gravity wave, so ocean waves, that will travel up to the coast, and then a fraction of it will get reflected, and the interaction that interferences of the incoming and reflected wave will produce this type of secondary microseismic noise. So what we saw from that is that we have to be careful when we are doing imagery of the crust using ambient noise, at least in this coastal area, is because the secondary microseismic noise could be very localized and not ideally isotropically distributed around the network. So because we have localized source of noise, this could be introduce error when we pick the velocity of this surface wave. So this is a second topic we tackled in the Gauthier PhD. So if we look at so this is a FK diagram. So we have the wave number here and well, it's cut, but the frequency here, you can have it. It's basically the same figure here. So the frequency here, and we see that when we measure onto a segment of the fiber, the dispersion curve with the FK diagram, we see that we have several branches, and it's difficult to know which one to pick, which is the one that represents the most the true velocity of the ground. Because we have an array, we are sensitive to the apparent velocity, and if the source is not aligned with our array, it could introduce bias into the velocity. So we tested two approaches. One is to identify the azimuth of the most coherent sources by doing beamforming or grid search approach, as indicated here. And then by identifying the incident angle, we can correct the dispersion curve to estimate the true velocity. And another approach is also to pick the slowest surface wave that we can measure. So this is the limit here between no energy and this first dispersion curve, dispersion wave that we can see here. And basically, so it's what we did. We measure the angle of different sources on different time. We corrected the apparent velocity using the incident angle of this surface wave. We compared it to the lowest velocity dispersion curve that we measure in the FK diagram. And then we produce a velocity model here of 18 kilometer long segment of the network, Toulon network, DAS network. And basically, we see that the velocity are, in average, slower than what we get if we don't correct for the apparent velocity and we pick only the maximum, the most energetic dispersion curve. So this is an ongoing work, but we wanted to highlight that we have to be careful when performing ambient noise imagery using DAS. So just to make a brief summary of this past experiment we did in the Mediterranean Sea. So we see that we are very sensitive to weak seismicity, even for when considering a single location of the DAS, so about 8 meters gauge length, so very a small section of the fiber. And we can estimate properly the source properties. So this is a good point for earthquakes early warning system that I will discuss later. And we are also sensitive to seismic noise that allow to both produce precise high resolution seismic imaging of the crustal properties and to monitor within time how this property will change. So this first result allow us to think that we can improve active fault monitoring using submarine fiber optic cable. So it's the third point of my talk. So now we are going to move in Chile. So this is a project that got funded last year by ERC. And if you see this map, so it's a bit confusing. Sometimes it's Europe behind, And to give you a rough idea of the size of the network of the GTD network, which is about half of Europe. And so this is a unique infrastructure. So it's there is 12 landing stations from north to Arica to Puerto Montt. And there is about 3,050 kilometer, 500 kilometer long network. And basically, the project I'm starting will consider monitoring three sections, 2 in La Serena and 1 in Concón. And I will show you some result of later of an experiment we did in 2021 in Concón. So there is 3 goals basically of my project. One of the first goals is to improve our capability of detecting weak seismic signal. So because we are getting closer to the trench, basically with DAS, I hope that we can improve quite largely the number of events we can detect and to detect more and more small events. And why it is important? It is important because, for instance, in Chile, there's a few documented case of foreshock for large events like preceding the Iquique earthquake, for instance, that are very nicely documented in different papers. But because the subduction zone of Chile can produce very large events, it is possible that the precursor of this event are quite large also and can be detected from the surface. So this is a good target to work with Chile. And if we compare again, so this is the noise spectra of DAS data here in continuous line red and green to broadband station. We know that we have basically the same detection capability and that we can expect if we put some more instruments, so more detection point, that we can detect also small events. So the second target of the project is to perform ambient noise imagery and monitoring of the crustal property. So this is an example of just a quite model of P travel. So I hope to be able to detect from the noise. So this is quite challenging actually, but I will see if we succeed in doing that, to detect body wave out of the noise and to use this body wave to perform ambient noise monitoring at depth with a specific target at the depth of the interface. And the third target is to develop the first prototype of offshore DAS earthquake early warning system. So here you have it was just a synthetic calculation based on previous events for the 5 years that before in the past. So here you have all the events that have a magnitude of above 6. And if we consider that all the fibers are monitored by the time of the event, in color, you see that if it's in color, you have the time that we can gain by using DAS data onto the with the GTD cable compared to the time we detect the event using the 3 closest seismic stations. And for some events that are the most further away, we can gain like about 16 seconds before the earthquake reach the seismic wave reaches the closest station. So this is another target of the last target of the 5-year ERC project. So as I said you, I told you before, in 2021, we did an experiment starting in October, and that lasts 37 days. And we were able to monitor. So this is a full section of the cable we monitor from Concon to La Serena, and basically we are reaching about half of it with an instrument with a DAS, ISN DAS, OptoDAS we use at that time. So I will show you some of ongoing work we are working on now with Marie, Alistair, and Martijn in the next slide. So one of the first targets is to build an automatic catalog of all the events we detected and we are going to detect during the ABIS experiment. So the objective here is to have real-time detection on raw data. So the idea is to work with to apply the detection as the data comes in, so on the most raw data as possible, and to get it the fastest detection we can have. So here is an example of one event that is a magnitude 2.8, about 30 kilometers from the closest point of the DAS, and we see different phases with this event. So Marie is right now in charge of processing the data, and we tried different things, but the first thing we tried is to apply a simple ST-Altea detection onto the data. So here it's on the same event. So basically, we were able to detect with this algorithm the two main phases. And using HDB scan, we can group the phases depending if they are first or second. So here we call it P and S wave, which is not really true, but at least it's the two most energetic coherent phases, I would say. And by doing so, onto this 37 or 6 days of data, she detected 25,000 clusters of detection. So it's quite challenging because there's a lot of noise also in the data. So we have a lot of detection that are due to this noise, as you can see here, this very coherent and instantaneous noise that are produced by noise that are happening close to the instrument. So basically, by removing automatically all these noise, we so far we have a bit more than 1,000 events. And to compare with the catalog of El Centro Sismológico Nacional, on the same period they detected 209 events. So there is also a thing that we tried, that she had the idea of trying to use a simple metric that we don't even need to read the data actually, so it can be used to assess very fast what the event we have in the data set is the standard deviation that is computed every 10 seconds of files for the full size of the fiber. And basically, when we have the standard deviation that increased by a factor, I think it was, I don't remember, maybe she will say later if it was 10 or 20. Basically, when the standard deviation pass above a certain value, we detect all the magnitude above 2. So this is could help to have a first glance at the data and how many events we can detect. So now,
yeah. That's Chris. Just a quick question. So you have almost 26,000 clusters, and clusters means what? It's like repeaters. They have a high cross correlation coefficient.
No. What we call cluster is a group of detection. For instance, here on the P wave, we call it one cluster. It's it at least HDB scan sees that it's a coherent detection along a given section of the fiber with a given density of points, and so with some specific criteria. But the HDB scan is a technique that allows to make cluster out of points. So basically, with HDB scan, we will be able to detect some group of points like phases, seismic phases, which is what we are aiming at. But it will also detect, like, have detection of noise. For instance, I didn't put the point here, but for all these noise, you have also a cluster of detection that are computed by ST-Altea. And the problem is that because we have a lot of noise, we are detecting a lot of clusters that are not seismic event at all, but seismic phases, but are only noise.
I see.
So that's why then we have to remove actually all the points, all the small clusters that we have been detecting that are not corresponding to seismic events with some specific criteria. So that's why from 20,000 cluster of a group of detection that are some given density, I would say, in time and space, remove everything that is not seismic. So we have some criteria about that.
Understood. Okay, thank you. And Renee, I see you put something in the chat, but maybe it's okay to just ask it out loud right now.
Yeah, it's okay. I can continue. Okay.
She's going to wait.
I thought, yeah, the question, how do you do the variable one with all the cluster? No. So probably Marie can, I mean, it's kind of a complex recipe to remove, I mean, to decide if it's a seismic cluster or not. So basically, for one specificity of cluster that are detected for noise, for instance, is that they have basically the same time along the fiber. So it's like infinite velocity. So we see them all at the same time for all the fiber, which cannot be a wave, because it has a given velocity and cannot be detected at a zero position and at the same time at 100 kilometers away. So basically, a lot of the cluster removing is based on the estimation of the move out of the velocity of this detection. And yeah, basically the rest of the event, Marie had to check by eyes if there were true events. So, yeah. So currently, also we are working with having a finer protocol to estimate properly the move out. I mean the seismic phases. So basically, changing the property of the ST-Altea and estimating it on a much finer grid. I mean, every 40 meters, while here it was, in the previous slide, we did ST-Altea on every 200 meters. And we see here, what's nice about it is that we have a quite complex time arrival of the phase, especially this first one, which are not P. They are converted, probably converted shear wave onto the sedimentary layer of the first body wave that we don't see, the first P wave that we don't see here. So there is a big challenge actually when we look a bit more in detail of this data, is to understand which phase we are looking at. And that is the work of Clara Vernet working with us, and she manually picked some of the events the biggest and the most probably clearer event we were able to detect during this post experiment. And basically, she's mapping and all the phases. So in dark here, you have the body wave, the first arrival, so the P phase that looks smooth, and because it's less sensitive to slower structure like the sedimentary basin and the sedimentary layer. And the idea here is to compare the travel time of the first P wave with the first converted P to S wave that is just before and has a quite complex travel time, and to be able to estimate the thickness of the sedimentary layer. So it's something that we are currently doing, and this involves quite a lot of work about picking all the phase we can see. But because we see a lot of, there is plenty of information, so we're trying right now to sort which are the phase we are seeing here. And this will allow us to have a better estimation of the travel time, taking into account the more complex structure, velocity structure of the crust. So another point that we are tackling right now, so it's ongoing work, is to locate all these events. So Alistair Trabatoni work on this topic right now. So the idea is to use the phases that I showed previously to make an estimation of the localization and compare with catalog location, for instance. And right now is working also with the raw data from the CSN on-land seismic network. So this is the on-land seismic network of the Centre Sismologico Nacional. And basically here you have an example of an event that if we only use on-land station, is located offshore, but which has a quite large uncertainties because there is no station on the west, obviously, and with a depth that is not well controlled, and the depth is here very large. By adding DAS data onto the location procedure, so this is only the DAS data, we see that we estimate the location close to the coast, but as you see, because we have almost a longitudinal array, we have a quite large uncertainty in east to west. But adding both DAS and on-land station, we are converging to a more precise location with probably a depth that is much realistic than the one previously estimated by only using the on-land catalog. So this is work we are working on, because probably working only with DAS data for building the localization capability, because of the geometry that is almost aligned, we will have like some problem locating the events in this east to west direction. But the idea here is to build a catalog of events that are well located using DAS data and on-land data simultaneously, and then from this well-located event, by applying double difference technique, for small events that are only seen by DAS data, for instance, being able to relocate them precisely based on this well-located event. Okay, and so one of the points target of this project is also to build a first prototype of DAS earthquake early warning system. And in this topic, we with ITSAC, we work on this last year. And so basically, we wanted to harness to evaluate how DAS can be used for early warning system, especially for the two topics of magnitude estimation and ground motion prediction. So there is a quite important limit of DAS, is because it has like a quite large noise in the low frequency part of its spectra. And generally, for magnitude estimation, it's much better to work with displacement rather than velocity or acceleration, because the displacement has contain all the lower frequency, and it's allowed to avoid the magnitude saturation. So it's better to work generally with displacement. For DAS, it's not simple to convert the data to displacement because we have inherent high noise at this low frequency, especially in the fiber that are very long. So for this application, we work with acceleration, and we try to assess the capability of detecting and estimating properly the magnitude with acceleration. So as you see here, to highlight this phenomena, here we have the displacement, and we see that it's proportional to 1 over f square per 2, and for velocity 1 over f, and for the acceleration, it's independent of the frequency. So we don't have any increase of the frequency in the low frequency. So one of the message for builder of DAS system is to reduce the noise at long period. So first thing that we need to do, as previously shown in Toulon, is to convert the data into acceleration by estimating the velocity with time. And the idea is to, from the acceleration estimated here, RMS, we can detect during the earthquake, and the earthquake, the seismic wave getting to the DAS, we can estimate the magnitude, and we see that after a few seconds, we have a stable estimation of the magnitude. So this technique model use earthquake spectra model derived from Brune that was developed by ITSAC in 2020. So if we compare, so here you have the time here of the time window we use, so 4 seconds, 10 seconds, and 50 seconds, and you have the comparison of the predicted magnitude and the catalog magnitude. And we see that even for 4 second window, we are not that off, maybe 1 degree magnitude off. And when we are taking a longer time window, the precision is increasing, and the comparison between the predicted and catalog magnitude are okay. We did the same for the peak ground acceleration and peak ground velocity to compare the predicted and the measure one at the different station, different online station for all the events we detected in Chile, in Greece, and in France. And basically, what we saw is that the residual are independent of the magnitude. They are independent also of the peak ground value, actually. And basically, the variability we have is related to the site effect and the past condition that we can probably later on improve in future implementation. So basically, we tested this technique. And here you have a map of some event, and you have the magnitude here in between brackets that is estimated at the time that the earthquake reached the coast. And you see that the difference between the catalog value and the time as the wave reached the coast, so this is only estimated by DAS, it's very close. So here 3.8, 3.7, and so the magnitude is well estimated. And on this plot, you have the time that we can gain using DAS versus the time that the seismic wave reach the seismic station. So here, for all the events that will occur here, we will gain like about 20 seconds, the time that the wave reached the coast. So for the alert, it's give us an idea of how the system will behave. There is still something that we did not address in this paper is so the largest event that we detect was a 5.7. So it's quite large, but there is a problem of saturation that is occurring, and we need to address that for future implementation. So we are working on that. So I have no idea what time is it. Oh, it's okay. So to conclude, so DAS offer very long, up to 150 kilometer detection capability that could be real time or almost real time, and hopefully real time very soon, and permanent. So this is two things that are very difficult to achieve in offshore setting. So the Chilean subduction zone is a privileged target for the observation and the understanding of the preparatory phase of earthquake, because we will be more sensitive to small events that are not detected right now with on-land station. And because there is a high seismic rate, it's possible, and large events, it is possible to detect probably some strong seismic marker that we can be detected at the surface. We saw also, and we will probably develop this system of earthquake early warning using DAS, and hopefully planting the seed for a permanent observatory. Just to as a teasing, so I only talk about solid earth application, but there is also other type of application about the ocean dynamic. For instance, Daniel Matta, who just finished his PhD some weeks ago, showed that we using some specific portion of the cable that are uncoupled to the ground, we can monitor accurately, quite accurately, the speed of the sea current, because the sea current at the seafloor is pushing the cable and changing the frequency of the suspended section of the fiber. So basically, by monitoring and using the this vortex-induced effect, we can quite accurately measure the deep sea current. Some quite old work now, but we can also detect some boats, acoustic signal. There are not only boats, but also mammals and other things that can be detected using this type of data. And also more recently, so Julian Pelaez, who is working at GeoAzur from like a few months now, is working on using the low frequency content of the DAS data to measure fluctuation of the temperature. And he was able to detect some change in the thermal structure as the change of the thermocline with time, and also some phenomena that are related to internal wave and upwelling. So that's all for me. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Sorry, my internet connection just died for a second, but it seems to be back. I invite everyone here to unmute, turn on your camera if you'd like, and join me in thanking Diane for a really fabulous talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.